Hi, folks, and welcome to their Saturday morning Samoflange. I'm Matt.
I'm Benjamin.
Hey.
Hey.
Hey. Hey.
Why are we talking about the Fonz in a Star Trek episode?
I don't know. So, we've talked about this before.
Now I'm just envisioning
on the podcast.
The Fonz on Star Trek and how great would that be?
You watch an episode of Star Trek every night. We've talked about this. We've mentioned this.
We've mentioned this several
times. Yeah. And
I watch a lot of Star Trek.
You had mentioned to me about, you want to do one about Star Trek.
Yes.
And top fives. The only problem is it's been a while. Well, I say it's been a while. It's been like 2-3 years. Hold on. Maybe 2 years since I've watched through all of the Star Trek. Okay. And I'll do it again eventually.
Sure.
I'll do it again eventually because I do enjoy those.
Now that you're finished with Stargate.
Yeah. Well, I just finished Babylon 5.
Right.
But I am a Star Trek fan too. But looking over the episodes, I can't remember each one of them. And I've never thought about top fives before. And I did tell you I was thinking about top five of my favorites out of each series. But I couldn't do that even because there's a lot that I just really enjoy. Some for nostalgic reasons because I remember, like I said, the original series. I have lots of good ones there.
Lots of good memories that are rooted in those memories.
And just that I just still enjoy today. And it's just hard to pick. It's like pick your favorite child out of all these. So, but then you changed it and you said you wanted to do it about the top five. What was it again? What was the title you gave me?
I had said.
You said essential episodes, like episodes that someone could watch and maybe get the gist of
without having watched Star Trek. Because I was asked at board game night when we were playing Time Stories, should I start watching Star Trek? And then they kind of asked, well, where should I start? I've never seen TNG, so should I watch it? And then you and I had a conversation very shortly after that, off mic, about
that's true.
TNG season 1 is rough, and it's really hard to point at something and there were so many episodes and there was something I had just watched that day before that if I said to myself, if someone came in right now and said, "What you watching?" "Oh, it's my favorite TV show," I would be so embarrassed. And just
for season 1,
there's a lot. Look, there's a lot of all of Star Trek. Like
for me,
the Star Trek Voyager episode. Well, you hate Voyager, but the episode where they have kids is like, or with lizards and stuff, is like in season 4 or something. But it's just there's a lot of them that have all the series have very rough episodes.
And as I was saying it, I look back over it. There was one episode you hated it.
I did.
Yes, that I thought was pretty cool.
Was it all of Star Trek Discovery? I'm sorry.
No. Yes, that. But no, I'm talking about Star Trek Season 1, Next Generation.
Okay.
That was the one that had the little things that crawled and attached to their neck and
I didn't hate that episode.
You did too.
It's terrible, but I don't hate it. It's so bad, though.
I loved it.
I love that episode. Cheesy, but wonderful. It's way more fun.
Because they were sending the signal. Where's the signal?
Right.
And I kept joking with you. Yeah. I kept joking with you because during Picard, I said it's going to be. Well, I'm looking for the spike on their neck. Yeah. Well, they all have long hair right now, so we don't know. Well, maybe she shaved hers off. I don't know. I was just so convinced they were going to bring back that hook because that had been awesome. That had been epic. That had been Wrath of Khan.
I feel like that is something that they will probably do with Picard season 2 coming up.
If they do, it redeems itself.
That's a big.
They've got a lot to redeem from season 1.
Have you watched that episode lately?
But let's be honest. We both saw the teaser for season 2.
Yes.
And you do have to admit, you are a little bit intrigued.
I am. You know what?
I was already in it to win it.
I was disappointed with what talking about Picard or is that
here's the thing. Discovery is such garbage. I cannot watch it. I cannot
force myself to watch it.
I can't force myself to watch it because it is horrible.
It's not Star Trek.
Picard was
struggle.
It was a C-.
Yeah, that's a good grade for it.
It's a C-.
But if they were going to hook me with anything, bring out the Q.
They're bringing the Q here, and they can eat. If this season gets better and steers away from the not so good first season, then we could have a B grade overall. I mean, it's slowly going to bring that show up if it can do it justice. Because I thought season 1 was just a big swing and a miss.
It depends. Yeah, it was a lot of swing.
But it wasn't a total loss. It was just a swing and a miss. Like I wouldn't give it a D+. I think that's being mean.
It's currently relying too much on nostalgia for TNG.
And they said they wouldn't do it.
They said they wouldn't.
And that's the thing. They want to deal nostalgia, but they don't want to give you all of it. Well, you got to go either full blast. They should have gone full blast and with brought the adventure with the entire cast, or never had him in there to begin with.
Or the casting director needs to step up their own game and hire somebody who can act, who's not in the original series or the Next Generation reboot.
Well, I mean, that's
because see, you've already forgotten the fact that there are other people in Picard, and that they tried so hard for half of every episode to introduce a new character that you gave a damn about, and you don't.
I remember I said I don't like any of them except for the captain. I thought the captain was interesting with all his different personalities on the ship.
That he had.
I like the captain.
That was a good acting role. He was okay. He was tolerable to watch.
The captain is my favorite one, and that's not saying much because everyone else sucked. I 1,000% agree with that. But I did enjoy the captain's character, so that's why I said it gets a C-. I enjoy how Seven, who's just longing for peace, is going out guns blazing. That's awesome too, but I'm totally making that up. Seven is horrible in this series. And I was never a Seven fan to begin with, I do have to admit. Jerry Ryan was kind of overrated
yes,
on Voyager. She was fine, but she didn't save that series. That the Doctor was still the best thing about that series.
He was the most wonderful actor on Voyager, and Seven was their blatant attempt at the sex symbol and going mainstream.
I understand what her purpose was.
Yeah, that was when they were really at a height of popularity, though, Star Trek was,
and everyone was going really crazy over Jerry Ryan. And I agree, she's very beautiful. But the thing is, though, just because she's beautiful and she's Borg doesn't mean that she's going to be the best thing on the ship. And people are acting like she was.
Okay, so there's a lot of leading into conversations that if people have never heard or watched Star Trek before, they're already a bit lost in this conversation. And that was what I'm not asking you to apologize, but that's my point, is that the fact that, top 5, top 10, top 100 episodes of Star Trek, that has been done to death 100 times over on any website you could look up.
Yeah, that's true.
For years. And I have a good friend who, Jake Black, who writes very often for StarTrek.com, and he has all kinds of articles. He lives and breathes Star Trek and WrestleMania. Wow. You should meet him. You'd like him. You'd be friends. I'll introduce you to Jake.
Sure.
But Star Trek, my point was for this podcast was to do a top 5 episodes that people who have never watched it, because I recently saw an interview with Alan Tudyk from a host of things, and he's having people come up to him at conventions about Firefly and Serenity, but also from Knight's Tale with Heath Ledger from forever ago, 2000 it was.
Right.
And a lot of his work is now being discovered by people who were fans, have had kids, and they're introducing it to their children. And it's being rediscovered again. And then the same conversation happened with the people doing TNG and Voyager. They're going to these conventions and just meeting all new legions of fans. And that made me thinking about it. What if somebody has just seen like one J.J. Abrams movie, and then what would you tell them to go watch? How would I answer that question the next time someone asks me at board game night?
Right.
Should I go back and watch it? And it's kind of like Doctor Who started forever ago, and you don't want to tell somebody to go back to the very beginning and watch them all from start to finish. I mean, some people do, but I don't think that's really doing it justice, and that's not going to convince me to watch a new show. I'm like, you tell me there's 700 episodes of this show and you have to start from the beginning to really get it. And I'm like, I'm not ever going to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people will today. With Netflix, YouTube, Hulu, everything competing for our attention, I just don't see people really sitting down and digesting shows like that. New fans, I'm talking about, won't sit down and watch everything from go, because as soon as you start to get into the dips of season 1 of a lot of stuff, you're like, what is this trash? And you just turn it off, and because there's a million other things out there. And I read a statistic years ago, this was years ago when I was in New Orleans, that if you only limited yourself to award-winning television and movies, there's not enough time in a lifetime to finish it all. You can't. No human can do that. It's beyond our lifespan.
Oh yeah.
That's just the good stuff. And so like the stuff, the Star Trek episodes that win Hugo Awards and everything else that are the premier sci-fi writing of that year, then that's just not enough time. You can't do it. And it's I love the fact that we live in that world, but I wanted to do kind of a top 5 episodes of stuff and it was really difficult. because we all know how big a Star Trek fan I am.
Yes, you are.
So this was an extreme challenge for me.
All right, so let's go through it. We're going to go backwards, right? 5 through 1.
And see, I have to sort my notes because I keep going back and forth, and I just went back to watch a couple of these to see. I have to see where my 5 is now because I ended up with like a top 10, but I don't want to do it. Do you have a first one that was a definite 5?
No, I don't have any.
You don't have any at all?
I don't have any because you changed it, and I was fine with that, but I'm not the person to say that. But I want to hear what your thoughts are. So go ahead and give me number 5.
Well,
or are these not in any order?
Not in any particular order at the moment. Okay. Things like All Good Things is my first one that came to mind as one of my favorites, which is the finale to Star Trek TNG. But then I thought about it through that lens of, to really appreciate All Good Things, it time hops through all the different stories that you've seen for the past 7 years, and that's what makes you appreciate it. So I threw out things like All Good Things and the big finale because of that criteria. So one of the episodes that I had, and the only one that I had from Star Trek Voyager, which I actually enjoy, is Someone to Watch Over Me. And that's the one where the Doctor and Seven, he realizes that he has romantic feelings for her.
Right.
And, it's a hologram falling in love with an ex-Borg and so forth.
Love it.
And they end up singing You Are My Sunshine together because he realizes that she has a singing voice,
And we talked about this episode not too long ago, and I told you, does it have the Doctor? You said yes. I said, okay, then I automatically approve of it.
Then you're good.
And I know that episode, and it's a great episode.
And I was really glad that you brought up that about Jerry Ryan earlier, because she was forced into that wooden role, and she's talked about that at conventions too. Like, you're not allowed to have many emotions. And Leonard Nimoy talked about that as Spock too. He's like, there's only so much you can do because you have diluted with monotone.
Yeah, that's true.
So he is the reason that episode works, because you see his reaction and you see the moment in his face when he falls in love, and he realizes he's fallen in love with her, and he's like, oh crap, what have I gotten myself into now? Because he's trying to teach her how to socialize and how to date and how to be a more human Borg. Right. And he's a hologram, so the irony of it is great. But when he realizes what he's gotten himself into and he can't get out of it, it's a beautiful first falling in love experience that someone typically of his age, they've already been through this once before. It's the first time he's ever fallen in love, and we get to see it, and he doesn't have to say it.
It's fantastic because in an effort to show her how to be more human, he also takes a step in that same direction. Hey, you're preaching to the choir here. I know exactly that episode. It's great because it is the Doctor.
And then I went through and I had to figure, okay, I love John Delancey. I got to meet the guy. We talked about him last week on the podcast, and we talked about how much fun he was as a person to meet and talk to. And then he is probably my favorite character on The Next Generation. Anytime Q showed up, I was in it. And just the way he carries every single scene, it was like it gave Patrick Stewart a break. Because Patrick Stewart, professional trained actor, worked in Shakespeare school for years and did lots of stuff professionally way before Star Trek. But there are a lot of moments when you just look at the cast and you're like, man, Patrick's the only one pulling his weight here. You guys are struggling and just delivering lines. And that was just so, because a lot of people couldn't find their characters, but I think he knew almost immediately who Captain Picard was. And I'm sure they had to go through a million production meetings to tell him about who he was too. But
to get his character down.
Exactly. But he brings it almost every week, Patrick Stewart does. But then when John Delancey shows up, he doesn't have to. And it's wonderful, because then the attention pulls back to Patrick Stewart.
It's great chemistry between the two.
Priceless chemistry. So my favorite Q episode was probably the Deja Q, which is the one where Data learns how to laugh for the very first time. He gives him emotions for half a second. And he has like a mariachi band that shows up in the
I was going to say the mariachi band that shows up, and just the way he appears, it's just great.
It's because of John Delancey's freedom and effortless. It looks effortless.
As Q, he has so much charisma he brings to that character that it just, Q is about putting the spotlight on him, and John Delancey does exactly that.
Yep.
He does exactly that. He draws you in immediately. And you think about it, he's a goofy character in the Star Trek universe in a way. He's the the mischievous imp,
He's
is
the
what he
Puck
is.
from
But
Midsummer Night's Dream.
Exactly. But the thing is, though, if it's a Q episode, you automatically, as a Star Trek fan, you automatically get excited because you're happy to see him all the time.
Exactly, and I think that I watched an interview about Bill Murray recently. He just won or was given the Santa Barbara Film Award this year. I forget exactly what it was, but he was talking about how he took a little bit of offense almost because someone said, "I hope they didn't pay you for that movie because you were just being yourself." And he was like, "What? This is really hard. Like, let me have you get up in front of a camera and try to act normal. Like, that's one of the hardest things to do."
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
Anyone who hasn't been on stage doesn't really know the feeling of just be yourself. That's not helpful because it's so hard with 300, 400, 2 million eyes looking at you.
Yep.
How do you just be yourself? And then have a TV camera 6 inches from your nose and to have a crew just off camera and to have people. And this is the other thing I love about TNG and TV from the 90s is that the TVs were smaller and the characters and the actors, if you notice, stand within 6 inches of one another for every conversation because they both had to fit into the frame.
Yep.
And that's something we do not do anymore or see anymore. And it's incredible how you see them, they're almost looking down to hit their mark on the floor because they've got an X that they have to stand on. And it's so uncomfortably close. And you realize you can see them like two people would normally stop about here, and then they force another step into one another, and they have this whole conversation.
But they still make it look natural,
and it looked natural because unless you're really looking for it, you don't see it that much. But
that's true. That is true.
But I that's one of the things that I look for when you watch Star Trek as much as I do. You see things like that.
You do see a lot of it. You start looking in the background.
Oh yeah. I love stuff like that so much. Like another one I have on here is Far Beyond the Stars, which is very relevant. It's the one from DS9. It's where Cisco suddenly gets thrust back into time almost, and he's the black writer in the 1950s.
I was about to say that's a good episode.
He's trying to make it in the sci-fi business, and you finally get to see all of the characters out of makeup. And I took that one kind of out of the top 5 in a way.
Odo as Odo. Without, you get to see Quark.
Yes.
You get to see,
Armin Shimmerman and Renee Auberjonois and all them.
It's great.
Unbelievable. In a way, that episode is made great because you have seen all of these characters for, I think, 5 seasons at this point.
Yeah.
And then you finally get to see what they look like otherwise.
Yeah.
What's brilliant, and what you were just talking about with the noticing the little details that the director throws in, like, it's only for not even a split second, but it's about how horribly black people have been treated over the years, and Cisco and Avery Brooks, I believe he directed this episode too, and got to do this story which was so powerful and poignant and wonderful, and they got the bad guys to play the bad guys. So you had Gul Dukat and Wei Yun, who were the primary antagonists of DS9. And they got to play these corrupt, dirty, vicious, power-hungry cops. Yeah. And they end up beating the crap out of him, in the middle of the episode. And nearly it's like a horrible, like, Rodney King moment. And they're just beating the crap out of him. And no one stops them. And I've caught this before, but it just struck me so much more that for a moment, you have the camera on the ground. And it's looking up as Mark Alamo and Combs look. They beat down on the camera like they're punching him or punching you as a viewer, and for a split second they put them back in their makeup, and it's Gul Dukat and Wei Yun beating on you. They're not the cops anymore because he's flashing back and forth between. He's flashing back and forth between lives of the DS9. Is it a story? Is it a guy on DS9 imagining this, or is it a guy imagining this who's on DS9?
Right.
And they don't even answer the question, which I also love because I hate things that are over-explained. But they switch Cisco back and forth between his captain's uniform and then his girlfriend is S.H.I.E.L.D. will switch back and forth from time to time.
That again,
and it's just for a split second. The thing that's amazing is that they got Mark Alamo to sit in that chair for 4 hours, get into full makeup
for just one shot.
Split second shot.
Yeah.
But it made all the difference in that moment because he's getting his butt beat by the Dominion, the bad guys that you know. And you're like, oh dang,
that's awesome.
But they pulled out all the stops for those great little just quick moments and
good
stuff like that. That's just good television.
Yeah.
That's good storytelling.
I totally agree.
And that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about.
Awesome.
With that.
All right.
And Armin Shimmerman, I wanted to bring this up too, about when Cisco breaks down in the office, when Odo comes in, as not Odo, and tells him, the magazine's not even going to get published this month because, they don't want a black writer you can't have a black captain, in space. It's never going to happen.
Right.
And he shuts him down. And so he loses it. You can't fire me, I quit kind of thing. And he launches into this incredibly powerful speech about, I'm a person, damn it. Can't you see? I'm a person. Mm-hmm. And it's one take, or not one take, it's one shot. And you can see they had it framed so that Armin Shimmerman, who's Quark, he's in the background while Avery Brooks is delivering this incredible speech. And Armin, I feel like he had an interview where he said, I was so scared that I was going to do something to ruin that take. Because Avery Brooks ends up falling down and at his feet, and you see Armin, he almost trips on the desk as he's trying to reach down to help him on the ground. He nearly busted it and completely ruined the whole shot.
Wow!
And he was terrified because they all could feel the power in the room as Avery was delivering that whole thing, and
he didn't want to ruin it.
No, he was so scared he was going to ruin that, and then he would have to take it again.
Wow.
So. That's my favorite DS9 episode, I think, and I'm in the middle of watching DS9 now, and I think of all of them that one is my favorite.
DS9 is another one that suffered from a hard first season.
Yes.
Just because it's not bad, it's just flat, and they didn't know where they were where they were going. Everyone's trying to get used to their characters and everything.
Right.
But then later on, it just takes off after season 2.
Right.
Immediately, faster than TNG got off.
And people talk about DS9 being the dark horse with the wars and the battles and everything. No, that didn't really kick in until later. There was a whole lot of good stuff going on way before the Dominion War started. So.
There's tons of other things.
The other DS9 episode I have on here, this one is, I guess, from a directorial and cinematography sort of point of view. Mm-hmm. In the Pale Moonlight is the title of. It's a later episode. It's a great Batman reference, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, love it.
But it's the one where Cisco breaks all of his Starfleet morals to win the war. It's where he makes a deal with the Romulans, and he bribes Quark. He actually pays off Quark to not press charges against somebody. And
okay, yeah,
Quark's just rubbing his grubby fingers together, saying, "What else can I get from you, Starfleet?"
Gotcha.
And he does it, and then it opens with a shot of Avery Brooks talking directly to the camera, and he's doing a captain's log, and it's beautiful because he sets it up. He doesn't even know the star date. Because what's the most classic thing you hear in a captain's log?
The stardate, whatever.
Stardate, blah, 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 blah. And, you learn the chronology of each episode based on that.
Right, that's true.
There's a whole methodology to it.
Right.
And I don't know that, but I don't know how to read star dates, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But
I don't either.
I mean, I watched it a lot, but I haven't done that. But he opens up looking into the camera, and one of the beautiful things that this director did is Cisco gives that entire captain's log either directly to the camera or at one angle from his left, and that is it.
I don't remember this episode. I'm trying to vision it while you're telling it to me.
Okay, I have a little bit more. Maybe I wrote it. So he doesn't even know the start at the beginning because he's so jumbled and destroyed by this war. Because he talks about every episode he has to post a casualty list on Fridays.
True.
He says, and I've learned to hate Fridays.
Wait. Yes. So, now I remember it. He's
like, computer, what is the date? And he says, it's only been 2 weeks. Well, I have to talk to somebody about this. I can't even talk to Dax about this. So he starts a captain's log. And you see him, he's in full uniform, and he's talking to the camera. And slowly, you get a bit more of him, you get the story, and then you cut back to him in his office, right? Or recording the log. And he's slowly taking off his uniform. And I thought this was so brilliant. He takes off one piece of his uniform, and then he takes off his shirt, and then his jacket. And, and then he's slowly getting drunk, too. He's drinking as he's doing the episode. And so by the end of the episode, he's talking into the camera. And you've only got 2 shots. And the director did that on purpose to make the audience believe that it was all one big captain's log. And so you don't have a lot of angles. You don't have a lot of juxtaposition of shots. It's just 2 shots. And that is really hard as an actor, as an editor. You don't just do 2 angles and that's it. Especially in quote unquote modern TV, but
cool.
So he broke the 98 or the 98th rule of acquisition was every man has its price. That's when the 98th rule was brought in, and Quark was so happy that he discovered that even Starfleet
has its price,
has their price. And then the most incredible thing that Avery Brooks does in that episode is at the end. He's done all these terrible things, and he's not telling anybody. Remember, he's just recording his captain's log.
Recording. I do remember this.
So you don't know anything that's going on.
I do remember this.
And then he looks at the camera, he starts to take another drink, and he says, but I can live with it. And then he pauses, he goes to take a drink, but I can live with it. And then he sits the drink down, he looks back into the camera, he carks an eyebrow, and he says, but I can live with it. And then he crosses his legs, and he just like relaxes, and he's like, I did the right thing. He decides, he makes his decision, and he says, computer, delete entire log.
Yeah.
And then there's not a fade to black. It's just delete log. And it cuts to black, which doesn't happen in Star Trek. No. It's almost always a fade out.
It always is fade out. I remember this now. I remember the ending. I remember the ending.
Because it never happened.
Yeah.
And it's so much more poignant than it was all a dream. Yes. Like it was just, no, that happened, but he deleted it.
Yeah, I remember the episode that you're talking about when you started saying that.
Yeah.
It was a good one.
Yeah, it was great.
Wow.
And
totally forgot about that episode. That was a good one, though.
The thing is, though, again, I'm watching all of these through the lens like you have not seen Star Trek before.
Yeah.
So what am I going to show you?
What would pull you in?
Right. His acting, that cinematography, people who like film, TV, and how they're made and stuff, the choices that director, because you can do anything. You know, you can film from anywhere, any color you want. Stuff like that. Did you know that purple was a forbidden color for years on Star Trek because Gene Roddenberry said it's too cheesy sci-fi, so they never used purple. And then DS9 episode where they had the big Bajoran festival, they broke all those rules and they like purple everywhere, and so they deliberately shot a purple episode. I think that might have been Renee's first episode he directed, and they just like, let's do it. So they just brought little stuff like that. You control everything. And when they can make those kinds of choices with all that ability, and it's just, it's so powerful to see it. And you know it's coming. Like I know the script, but it's just amazing every time I see it.
That's great. That's great. Love it. Love it.
These two flip-flopped.
Okay, go ahead.
And I have talked to you about my favorite Star Trek episode before.
Yes, you have.
I realized in making this list, because we had this conversation about 3 weeks ago as well.
Okay.
We aren't quite sure what our favorite iteration of Star Trek is. We were like, is it TNG? Is it DS9? And we know it's not Voyager. We know it's not Picard. We know it's not Discovery. Is it the original series? You have a lot of fond memories of the original series.
I would have to say original series because of my memories.
Because of the history you have with it.
Yeah, but I told you it was hard for me to discover between Next Generation and DS9. It's really hard for me.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I think, have the same sort of thing. I realized in putting this episode together that I have to go with TNG because my top 3 things are.
I can't argue with either one. I think both are fine, but there's just so much good. Every time I rewatch Deep Space Nine, it inches closer to the finish line to where now they're both just really good.
Yeah, I get that.
They're just solid episodes.
The acting level, I think, there's more of a quality acting on DS9 than any other Star Trek series. You have more quality actors who live and breathe acting, and they do it. That's their whole life, and they don't care about anything else. You see it every time Quark is on screen with Armin Shimmerman. You see it every time Renee is on screen with Odo, and every Brooks. They bring it every single time. And there's clearly some bad actors in there too, but man, the ones that bring it, they bring it. And TNG was mostly limited to John Delancey and Patrick Stewart. As far as good quality screen time, like you knew you would basically never be let down by this. And I have often, just as a general Star Trek answer to this, what's your favorite kind of thing, I've told you before about how it's the episode called Family, where it's just after the Borg cliffhanger.
I've told you I think that's one of the best
episodes
ever.
It is. And
By the way, it's the entire episode happens on Earth.
Yes.
Doesn't even happen.
And it's
space,
episode
so, yeah.
2 of season 4
Yes.
as well, which is just after the first cliffhanger in Star Trek history. And this gigantic, powerful, is Picard going to leave the show? Is he going to die?
Yeah.
Like, what are they going to do? And here's something that I found out just today. I had no idea. When they wrote Best of Both Worlds, Part 1, they had no idea how
they're
to
going to
finish
it. Yeah,
I
heard that.
I did not know that.
They didn't know how it was going to go.
That they wrapped, and they're like, we'll figure it out when we get back.
Off season, we'll figure it out in the writers'
And then
room.
they got back, and then on day 1, they had a bunch of new writers, and then the lead writer says, okay, I don't know how we're going to finish this still. And they were all kind of like waiting for some direction. No, he was like, I still don't know how we're going to do this. And they wrote what? That's the biggest. That was the episode that pulled it away from the original series, that set it apart and let it become its own thing. That's when it really began.
Yeah, that's when it started.
But the next episode, the very next episode, was when they dropped Family on You, and Gene Roddenberry hated that episode because he says that mankind has grown past this petty squabbling between brothers. This nonsense about...
Was he still alive?
He was. He was at the time.
I didn't
They
realize
gave him
that.
the script. He hated that script.
Oh, wow. See, I
And-
thought he was gone after season 2.
And-
dead.
No, he famously, like you said, this isn't the 24th century, because the whole point of Star Trek is that we've grown beyond our petty squabbles. We're better people.
I wonder what he would think of Picard.
I don't even want to even go.
Okay, so
I
go
want to
ahead.
ruin this podcast with that. So they ended up writing and getting the script that they wanted for Family, and it's really. And the exception I feel like that they made, that they could get away with, that even if you argued it to Gene Roddenberry today, because I agree with him that humanity at that point should be better than that pettiness. But think about what Jean-Luc Picard just went through. Like, literally, you got abducted and turned into a cyborg
and
by the most horrible villain we've ever known.
It doesn't matter how we matured as a race. Brothers going to be brothers.
Yeah.
Siblings going to be siblings.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. That's always been the case.
I think it was the pettiness of the brother who lived in France that he was upset about. Like, it doesn't matter.
That's brotherly rivalry. You're always
Right.
going to have that.
But for several seasons, we had Patrick Stewart being upset or being the captain. He's very confident and powerful and everything else. And then you see him break psychologically in this episode, and that's all.
Everything about that episode is just beautiful. And we joked about this before Picard came on. We said, wouldn't it be great if the entire season was just him on the vineyard? And to be honest, if that was it,
would have been better than what we got.
No. It probably would have been. Think about this.
Before we knew anything about Picard.
I'm being serious here. This would have been a great Picard show if. What about this? What if Picard is just Picard at his winery and people are just visiting? And maybe he's telling stories from his past, or maybe they're just having it. It's not an adventure, but it's just a sit down, I got to get straight. You're the captain. You helped me out once. And so he's kind of like in a way, he's not a psychiatrist, but he's kind of like the psychiatrist. He sits them down, has some wine, they discuss their problems. Picard delivers his wisdom, tells them about a choice. Maybe they do some flashbacks of TNG, or flashbacks when he was right before he retired as a general, and he's helping fix people's problems. Every once in a while, Geordi comes. Another episode, whoever comes in, and they're just talking about this and that. They're talking about old times. They're talking about things. Maybe Geordi comes to him because Geordi's about to tell him that I'm about to die. So
and
this
then
is my
are you leaning
goodbye.
too much on nostalgia here, though?
No, because they're coming in every once in a while, but they're only there for one episode and then they're gone. But it's basically just him just sitting around the vineyard, trying to figure out how to get rid of the worms. Maybe what I'm saying, there's some kind of flies that are eating the grapes or whatever. Well,
I thought you meant the space worms from the other galaxy.
That'd be great. But anyway, no. I'm like saying there's one episode where he's trying to figure out how to get these flies away from the grape or whatever, to get away from the grapes. Well, then as he's talking to someone, he realizes this guy's problem is kind of similar to what he's doing. They're kind of related in a kind of fact.
Like a Saturday morning special or
well, no. When he tells this guy or girl or whatever, here's what you should do when a problem comes at you. You're looking at it from one angle. You need to always look at it from. So as he's giving this advice, then he kind of sits back and goes, excuse me. And then he goes out to his vineyard to figures out how,
sure.
or he figures out what's going on with the grapes, or how the coyotes or whatever get into because he figured out their secret, because now he's taking his own. So
that sounds a lot like House. That's what you're doing.
Well, it's Picard on the. Are you telling me that you would not love that?
I mean, I would totally watch it. But
I mean, I think, but it's not about, because it's just called Picard. It's not called Star Trek. So we don't have to go into Romulans. We don't have to do all that. I mean, a Romulan could come and talk to him.
You have a point, but I do not think you would ever get that through a production.
It would never go through production. No,
Any
never.
TV producer would be like,
I'll be honest. I believe every old school Star Trek fan from Next Generation, I believe they would love a series like that.
They would, but producers wouldn't want it at all.
Producers wouldn't want it at all.
Because you need new fans.
You need new fans, and I get that. But the thing is, though, it would be so quaint. It would be called Picard. It would be just this nice, and it'd be low budget. Just happens on the vineyard. You don't have any special effects.
It could
you
work.
Have makeup.
But remember the blowback. I don't know if you do, but the blowback that DS9 got, they're like, wait a minute, there's not going to be a ship. We're going to keep it here.
I understand, but it would be critically acclaimed. It would be boom, boom, boom. It would get a lot of love at the Golden Globes or whatever. But to be honest, I do think if they had done something like that, and we joked, we knew that it wouldn't be like that, but we joked about it. But I'll be honest, if that was what it would have been like, I think that would have been one of the best. It would have been up there with the rest of the old school Star Trek series. For me, because the character's grown, he doesn't have to go off fighting in the galaxy anymore. He's resting in the vineyard, but the knowledge, mankind's need to be better, better themselves, is still going on, just on a smaller scale.
And that is what I feel like.
And that's what the heart of Star Trek is.
Exactly. A lot of Picard and Enterprise never grasped the fact that Gene Roddenberry's original vision of it was, we've gotten better as people. You and I had this conversation in our top 5 superheroes podcast. We talked about Superman and Batman.
Definitely Picard. Enterprise? Do you mean Discovery?
I'm sorry, that's what I meant. Yes.
Okay, I was going to argue with you on Enterprise.
Enterprise is great. I love Enterprise.
Yeah, I love Enterprise too. But Discovery, yes, they don't. We've de-evolved or something. I don't know how many times Gene Roddenberry has turned in his grave. I mean, but he obviously can't get any sleep between those two shows. But I wish it was. I wish they would. I know it wouldn't have garnered new fans, but you make a cheap little. It'd been low cost and it'd been just something good. I think that
something
people would have
poignant.
loved.
That's interesting. Like the stuff that's being made now feels so forgettable. Like it's fine. It's set in the Star Trek universe, but it's so forced.
When Bilbo had his adventure in The Hobbit, no, here you go. Tolkien retired the character. He can't because he wrote, and the end of The Hobbit, he wrote that Bilbo lived happily ever after. Well, you thought, wait a minute, Bilbo can't go on the Lord of the Rings adventure, because originally Bilbo was supposed to carry the ring to the Mount Doom. But when he got to tell that story, he started off with Bilbo and went, wait, I can't do that because Bilbo lived happily ever after, and this is not a happy moment. So Bilbo gets kind of a happy ending where he gets to go live with the elves. And he's been content living with the elves this whole time. Yeah. So in a way, he still gave him his happily ever after. And the thing is, though, you know what I'm saying? That we just can't stop. You can't put the good admiral down. Old Picard has to go out there and start swinging again at 80 years old. No. All he has to do is sit there, drink some wine, and give advice.
With Patrick Stewart's voice, people would listen to it just for that.
And with Picard's wisdom, it makes sense that people go to see the old admiral. And like I said, every once in a while, a guest star appearance by Worf or someone, comes in there, and we see how that character's matured. We don't need to know much. We don't need an adventure. Just where are they now in their life?
Yeah.
And then they move on. And I think it's a great way to say goodbye. Maybe Geordi comes in and he says, "Hey, they gave me the last microchip of." Data, and let's bury him. Let's give him a proper burial that he never got. And so and I know he would have liked to go in this vineyard here. So maybe they bury him in the vineyard. It
sounds like prime. I don't want to say fan fiction, but like a comic series almost, like something.
Well, a comic series. It needs more action. Than that.
What am I thinking?
I don't know, but to be honest, it would be a great little side.
They feel like stories that need to be written, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
because that would be a great pitch, I think, for not TV, but some other medium.
I mean, you could do a book of short stories and everything.
But it would even work as a podcast, like having Patrick Stewart narrate audio.
Yeah, an audio thing. But yeah, I'm sorry, but you got one more, don't you? Or is that it?
I do. I have an honorable mention.
Do your honorable mention. We'll wrap
which
up.
was
sorry.
Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, which is the movie. Yeah, I know, out of left field. So a lot, but I remember this is the premise of I've never seen Star Trek before, and so Star Trek VI is a murder mystery that is unto itself. It's General Chang and Christopher Plummer who's just killing it as the villain.
Yeah,
and he quotes Shakespeare whenever things happen.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
No, I know.
And so they have to solve the crime,
Yeah.
And so that's just a great, I think, individual movie by itself.
I know 5 was supposed to be their ending, and when it just bombed with fans, they said, we need to correct this. Yeah. And 6 was a good ending.
6 was, they brought Nicholas Meyer back, and they really nailed it.
I remember watching that in theaters, and someone goes, is it really the end? I said, it really is. And I said, and they said, did it do it justice? I said, yes, it did.
Yeah.
It was a good one. And I know that because in the credits, they sign off.
They sign off on it, right. Because 5 was and subtitled The Final Frontier, and it was supposed to be the last one, and William Shatner got shafted on that direction big time. But anyway. That said, the other...
Release the Shatner cut.
Yeah, right. The other Q episode I skipped earlier was Tapestry, which was just the one where Picard gets stabbed in the heart as a cadet.
And he gets to let him relive his life.
Let him relive that moment because he has an artificial heart and what he has to go through, how his life would have been different, and how he would have ended up.
It's a Wonderful Life, Star Trek style.
Exactly, which was beautiful.
But was good.
And that is a very good one-off, self-contained episode.
Because it's always been a regret of Picard.
Exactly.
And so then he says, okay, I'll let you resolve that regret. He never has
to do that.
But then his life he never takes
not
chances.
What he wanted.
He's never who he wants to be. But he's like, well, no, that's what you... Because he always condemned his younger self and said, I was just so rushed. It was so awful. Yep. He thinks that was a big mistake in his life, but it actually turned out to define who he was.
Exactly. And that he loved who he was. Then what the choices he had made. He's like, I want that life.
And I think it is... What season is that?
Oh, I don't know.
Recall? Okay. There's a point where you kind of realize that Q just isn't messing with them, but he actually is doing Picard a favor.
Yeah.
And having him see something in himself. So there's a little bit of...
They are on trial for the entire series.
That's true.
From episode 1 to the end, they are on trial.
At that point, Q is actually doing him a favor. He's helping them.
He wants them not to be winked out of existence by the Q. He wants them to pass the test.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so you see, but I think that's one of the first times we see that he's actually helping, not just antagonizing,
You're right. He's
teasing.
Not just a menace at that point. He is still a menace.
Yeah.
But it's wonderful because the way they open it up with him going to heaven and he dies.
Now you have
says,
so many...
I'm God. And it's like, you're dead. It's fantastic.
There's so many great episodes. The time where he comes in naked and he's a regular guy and something's terrible. My stomach, it's hurting. You're hungry. Yeah. It's awful. Yeah. This is great.
That's been done several times in Star Trek.
I blacked out.
No one could do
fell
it like
asleep.
Right.
It's just great.
Yeah.
And they're like, they don't know what to do with him. They don't want to release him. Worf wants to kill him. Yeah. It's just unbelievably fantastic.
In the hands of a lesser actor, that had never worked.
No.
But John Delancey is the reason that Q is so beloved, is because that is so hard to do as an actor, to get up there and to be natural and to relax enough to make comedy like that.
It's hard to make that work.
Yes.
And he does.
With the lines that he has too. Like it's not poetry he's reading.
No.
It's not amazing. It's still Star Trek babble, but he nails it.
Yes, every time.
Finally, and I know we're running long, number 1, top Star Trek. If you have never seen it before, you should watch The Inner Light on TNG, which is the one where they encounter a strange probe, and then he goes thrown back into a world that was dead for 50,000 years or however long. Yep. And he goes through an entire lifetime.
Lives his life.
And comes back. And this is what I had written about that, is seeing Patrick Stewart's sense of confusion when he wakes up. And he takes his time. And this is what I thought was so priceless with the way they directed this. He's so slow. And you cannot do this on modern television. They don't let you do this because he takes a full 10 seconds after he wakes up to say anything. Now, if we paused for 10 seconds on this podcast, people would think something's wrong.
Yeah.
You pause 10 seconds in any conversation. But Patrick nails every bit of that confusion, the fear. He looks at Will Riker like he's never seen him before, or he hasn't seen him in 50 years, and you believe everything about it.
Yeah.
Now, what's amazing is that was primarily a Patrick Stewart episode. So they filmed everyone else those days.
Yeah. And then it was just him and
in that one shot. They filmed
town.
everyone's episodes, and then everybody went on vacation for a week while Patrick did his thing for this episode, and that was a whole other cast. And so they were done. They wrapped all those scenes in a day. But he had to play all that off as if he had lived for 50, 80 years in this other life on another planet with a wife and family. And that was, speaking of regrets that he's had, he never had a family. He never had a wife. He never had anything else he did do. And he got to live all of that and experience all that. And you wake up and you're like, it's all a dream. And you're like, oh. But then you see the heartbreak that he is. And so he takes his time, and they call him Captain. And he's like, Captain, like he's never heard that word before. And then he pauses again, and then he looks at Beverly, and he pauses again, and he does it again for like another 10 seconds, and it's riveting.
It's great.
There is no producer that I could think of, any show I could think of now, that would let an actor take that much time with quote unquote dead air.
Yeah.
Never would happen. And then it's masterful the way that he does it, because he doesn't rush any of it, and then you see his shock, his loss, and then he wakes up and he says, how long have I been out or gone or whatever? And
thinking for
20
years,
25 minutes, and he says, and he's sort of like, okay, wait a minute, 25 minutes, and he's just blown away. And this is I had to write more about this, because I would challenge anybody who likes acting in any sort of capacity, or just, like I said earlier, likes TV, movies, and how they're made. If you memorize his lines and just memorize them to yourself, and say the lines he says, and then try to imagine, like I said earlier, there's a whole crew around you. There's two people 6 inches away from your face, and then try to deliver those lines with that level of depth and that pause. Feel how heavy those pregnant pauses are, because that is when you have the next line, everybody's staring at you, and it's a different type of pressure. And then he goes to his quarters and he hesitates again, and this is one of my favorite things that I really wanted to that touches up to people who have seen the series, is that this is Inner Light happened in, I think, the end of season 5. Okay. And so you've got a full 5 seasons of Picard. Like, basically, anytime the doorbell rings, he's all, come! And he screams, like, basically. And I had a good friend who walked into the room one day, and they're like, I wish I had that kind of power and authority. He just tells people to come! He doesn't even say come in. He just says come! And he's always done that for 5 straight seasons. And then after he wakes up on the bridge, he gets escorted to his quarters. He's looking around. He's still confused. And the door rings. Right, the doo-doo-doo-doo. And he hears it, and he's remembering that sound for the first time in 50 years. And he's like, come? Like, almost with a question mark. Yeah. And it's the only time he doesn't command somebody to come in.
He's so out of it,
He's just so, like, you can see him remembering it. Yeah. And you don't have...
It's coming all back to him.
You do not have any expository dialogue to tell you what's happening. It's just him acting, and you are getting everything you need from his face. And then the last 2 minutes of the episode, Riker hands him the flute, and he sees it, and then he dismisses Riker with a glance. It's like, there's no dialogue. He says, in the ship, we found this. That's the last line of that episode. Great. And then there's a full 3 minutes of silence. He dismisses him with his eyes, and then he looks at the flute, and his heart breaks, and your heart breaks with you, because it's the whole family.
Because that was his whole life, his grandchildren.
Was in that flute. And in a way, it just wrapped up.
It's a touching moment.
It wasn't just it was all a dream. It happened, because now he can play the flute, and he had said earlier, I have no musical talent, but he learned in that lifetime how to play it, and it's just incredible storytelling at its absolute best. And then they let Patrick be Patrick at the end, and it's I think it's a full 3 minutes of dead silence. All you hear is the Enterprise engine humming in the background, and then he plays the flute, and that's how it ends.
Great.
You can't write stories better than that. And
it is great.
That's the reason I love Star Trek.
Good ones. Good picks.
I go on.
Good picks.
And I drone.
And might I quote Picard
please.
In the last episode, I should have done this a long time ago.
Done this a long time ago. Yeah, good stuff.
aerial shot as they're all
Of poker playing.
Deuce is Wild and Sky's
Sky's
the
the
limit.
limit.
Oh,
Yep.
best ending to a TV show ever.
It is.
Ever.
And yeah, it's great for
There
the
you
fans that they did that.
Hey, that was good.
But I just wanted
Well
to give
done.
people an option to, if you've never seen it, try some of these out.
Yeah.
If you've never seen any Star Trek and you want to start somewhere and see the acting and what Picard should have been, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe can be. We got, I don't know, season 2 in Delancey. Maybe he'll up the game with Delancey showing up.
I hope so.
I really hope so too.
Either way,
We'll see you next time.
on more
Saturday
morning.
Samoflange.